I'm Primal Piggy, and thank you for joining me for the first in our Identities and Roles in the BDSM Lifestyle series. This is part one, understanding the differences. When first starting out your journey in the BDSM lifestyle, you'll read and hear a lot about roles. There are two definitions for roles in this BDSM lifestyle. First is how you identify in this lifestyle and or within a dynamic such as a dominant or a submissive. Those would be identities. Second is what your role is in a scene, such as a role playing title that is directly related to the kink within the scene. This is not a title outside of the scene, and we're talking about a play scene. And it has nothing to do with your dynamics, your potential dynamics, which are your relationships, or your lack of desire to have one. A type of role within a scene would be something like a sadist, a top, a rigger, a rope bottom. While your identity, which is that first definition, is a more permanent title, it can change as you or your relationship dynamic evolves. Your role, which is definition number two, can change with each play scene or even during the middle of a play scene. There is a lot of confusion and incorrect information being spread about the two different definitions of BDSM roles. To be honest, it would be easier to understand if it was separated, such as we do, and became identity and roles. Since it's all grouped under one word in a lot of BDSM resources, regardless of the different definition, many people in the lifestyle lazily group all of the left people, the left side of the slash, and the right side of the slash people together. All the more dominant or dominant displaying people, and all of the more submissive or submissively displaying people, depending on what it might look like in a kink scene. We say lazily because, with a small amount of research, it's very clear what the differences are between an identity and a role. This is mainly because of a certain BDSM test, which was like a survey, or it's a survey that's online, and it being looked at as a starting point or a conversation starter, or worst of all, as how you pick your role. And yes, even though people claim that they don't take this BDSM test seriously, it happens all the time. And it's even pushed by some different groups of people, especially online. So look at the definition one, identity, as who you are as a person, who you are in a relationship dynamic, and who you are outside of a play scene in your more everyday life. Definition two, which is role, is who you are role playing as during a scene or a kink, or what type of kink that you are giving or receiving within a kinky play scene. Your identity will never be your role, and your role will never be your identity. In other words, they aren't necessarily interchangeable, or just because you have a role in a kinky scene doesn't automatically make that your identity outside of the kinky play scene. And just because you're a dominant in a DS relationship and that's your identity, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be a dominant within the play scene. You may be the bottom of a certain play scene, depending on what kinks are involved and what kinks you like, what you enjoy, and what your partner in the scene enjoys doing. The roles are basically some type of top or bottom title Top meaning someone who does an action within a kinky play scene, and a bottom being someone who receives an action or an action is done to them in a kinky play scene. Just about everyone that has a kink in their life is either a top or a bottom in that scene. Some people are versatile within the scene, meaning that they both give and receive throughout the scene or have the potential to do so. This doesn't take away from your identity in the lifestyle. If your identity is a D type identity, which is like a more dominant type, you can take on either a top or a bottom role during a scene. Same with an S type or submissive type person. You can continue to be on the receiving end, or you can be the one giving the kink and take on the top role within a kinky play scene. Knowing both your identity and your kink roles will help you during your research and your education. It will also help in looking for and vetting potential play partners or potential partners for relationships. When someone taking the test that we mentioned, the BDSM test, gets their results and the test gives them a kink role falsely as their identity, which it does more times than not, it's created a breakdown of the real identities. For example, the test will sometimes tell people that brats are their identity, but bratting or being a brat is a kink within a negotiated uh, play scene. It is a negotiated behavior of a bottom. It can be related to primal play or Sam, which is smartass masochist, or it could be within punishment scenes. You can be a submissive that plays the role of a brat during the scene, but a brat is not something that you can identify as in this lifestyle. When you're doing so, you're just telling people that's a kink that I like or enjoy. And maybe you enjoy it a lot, but it's still not an identity. It's just a kink that you enjoy. If you've negotiated that behavior, uh, will continue. Um, and if it continues outside of kinky play scenes, that's unique to your dynamic, your relationship. And yet it's still not your identity. It's just a kink that you enjoy doing in your relationship dynamic. It shouldn't be taught as an absolute and should not require changing the meanings of those things that are already established traditionally as identities or roles. We know this is something that's often pushed by the new or the next generation of people involved in BDSM. And sometimes it's a hot topic for those that don't understand the difference between an identity and a role. But one very important key factor is that the tops and the bottoms should be respected in this lifestyle, and that it takes just as much research, education, and experience to be a top as it does to be a dominant. Same with it takes just as much research, education, and experience to be a bottom as it does to be a submissive. One is not better than the other. They're just different. Having a certain identity doesn't mean that it is more than or better than having a certain kink role that you like to play. It's just they're different. They're not the same. I'm Primal Piggy. Thank you for joining me for this first in this series of identities and roles in the BDSM lifestyle. You can find all of our resources, a bunch of different educational resources at www.bdsmunited.com. It was a joy speaking with you today, and I'll talk to you again soon.